Thanks for joining us. So let's talk about this. As discussed, there was a real thought that these legal cases would have been Donald Trump's doom in his presidential campaign. That was not the case. Only Special Counsel Jack Smith is reportedly ready to go on a counterattack as the Trump administration continues to target Smith and the FBI agents who worked on his team. Denied to him by the Supreme Court decision asserting broad presidential immunity from prosecution and adverse rulings from a Trump-appointed judge on the federal bench in Florida. One actually got to trial, the matter in New York that most around Trump believe actually helped him win. The other cases were delayed and then scuttled altogether, in part by the Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah, Jonathan, Jack Smith sees what's happening, and he knows that he would be the biggest trophy for Donald Trump's wall of retribution. But be careful what you wish for, because Jack Smith is like that quiet kid at school who unleashes a fury of haymakers when a bully tries to take his lunch money.
Okay, so picture this. You're Donald Trump. You've been claiming for years that all these investigations are witch hunts, that prosecutors have nothing, that it's all political persecution, that there's no real evidence against you. You've been telling your supporters this is all made up, that Jack Smith is a corrupt prosecutor on a fishing expedition. And then boom, Jack Smith releases his findings. Not hints, not speculation, his actual evidence. And it's devastating. Smith says publicly, "We had tons of evidence of willfulness, tons of evidence that you knowingly kept classified documents, that you deliberately obstructed the investigation, that you understood what you were doing was illegal and did it anyway." Smith releases court filings showing you personally directed the fake elector scheme, showing you knew it was crazy or illegal and pushed forward anyway, showing you pressured dozens of Republican officials to help overturn the election. Smith's final report states clearly that you would have been convicted if not for presidential immunity, that the evidence was strong enough, that the case was solid, that the only reason you're not already in prison is a technicality. And all of this is documented, recordings of your conversations, testimony from your own staff, encrypted messages, documents with your signature, all of it proving your guilt beyond any doubt. And Smith is saying it publicly for everyone to see, for prosecutors to use, for juries to hear when you finally go to trial. This isn't a witch hunt. This is a prosecutor who built an airtight case, who has overwhelming evidence, who's ready to send you to prison, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
One of the most conservative circuits in America, once again saying to Eileen Cannon, you can't do this.
Right. She's been reprimanded a number of times.
By the 11th Circuit.
By the 11th Circuit. And let's do recall, though, that it was, as reported in Carol Lenig's, our colleague's new book, that's who they got. And, of course, she has ruled for Trump consistently. Former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Ehrenberg. Dave, thank you.
And Dave, thanks so much. Dave has a column in our newsletter.
The idea that some of Smith's deputies wanted to try these cases in Washington. He said, no, let's do in Florida. It was a 1 in 6 chance to get Cannon.
This is wild. This is absolutely devastating for Trump because Jack Smith isn't bluffing. He's not exaggerating. He has the evidence, tons of it. Evidence showing Trump's willful criminal conduct. Evidence that will convict Trump once he loses presidential immunity. Evidence that makes prison inevitable. So let's talk about it. Let's break down what evidence Smith has, what crimes it proves, why Smith is so confident about conviction, and what this means for Trump's future. Because trust me, this is the end game. This is Smith laying out his case, showing the public what he has, and confirming that Trump is going to prison. Now, Jack Smith's evidence falls into several categories, and each category proves different aspects of Trump's criminal conduct. Let's start with the classified documents case. Trump took classified documents when he left office, hundreds of them. And when the government asked for them back, Trump refused. He hid them. He lied about having them. He obstructed the investigation, and Smith has tons of evidence proving all of this. Smith said publicly, "We had tons of evidence of willfulness." That means evidence showing Trump knew he had the documents, knew he wasn't supposed to keep them, knew returning them was required, and deliberately chose to keep them anyway. What evidence? Recordings of Trump showing classified documents to people who didn't have security clearance, bragging about having them, acknowledging they were classified and he shouldn't be showing them. That's Trump's own voice, on tape, proving he knew the documents were classified and knew he wasn't supposed to have them. Testimony from Trump's staff, people who packed boxes, who moved documents at Trump's direction, who were told by Trump to hide documents from investigators, all of them testifying about Trump's deliberate obstruction, encrypted messages, and communications showing Trump directing a cover-up, messages about moving boxes, about hiding documents, about lying to investigators, all of it creating a paper trail, proving Trump's obstruction, documents proving Trump lied to his own lawyers. Trump told his lawyers he'd returned all classified documents, but he hadn't. He'd kept some, and there's evidence proving Trump knew he was lying. That's obstruction of justice. That's a federal crime, and Smith has all the evidence to prove it. Now let's talk about the election interference case. This is Trump's scheme to overturn the 2020 election, and Smith has evidence showing Trump knew he lost, knew the election was legitimate, and tried to overturn it anyway. Smith's unsealed court filings show Trump personally directed the fake elector scheme. Trump knew the plan was to create fraudulent slates of electors in states he lost, to have those fake electors cast votes for Trump, and then to pressure Congress or Mike Pence to accept the fake electoral votes instead of the real ones. That's fraud. That's conspiracy. That's election interference. And Smith has evidence proving Trump directed it. What evidence? Documents showing Trump's direct involvement in organizing fake electors, communications between Trump and Republican officials, coordinating the scheme, testimony from people who participated, describing Trump's orders. And here's the key. Smith has evidence that Trump was told the scheme was illegal. His own advisors, his own lawyers, told Trump that what he was planning was crazy or illegal, that it wouldn't work, that it was a crime, and Trump pushed for it anyway. That proves willfulness. That proves Trump knew what he was doing was illegal and chose to do it anyway. And that makes conviction much easier, because prosecutors don't have to prove Trump should have known it was illegal. They can prove Trump actually knew because people told him, and he did it anyway. Smith also has evidence linking Trump to 160 Republican officials in the conspiracy to overturn the election. That's not just Trump acting alone. That's a massive conspiracy involving dozens and dozens of lawmakers, party officials, and Trump allies, all coordinating to overturn election results. And Smith has mapped it all out. He knows who was involved, what they did, what they said, and he has evidence documenting all of it. Now, Smith's final report, released in January 2025, makes his position crystal clear. Smith states that he stood fully behind the merits of prosecution, that he believes the evidence was strong enough to convict Trump, that Trump would have been found guilty if the case had gone to trial, and the only reason it didn't, presidential immunity. Trump won the 2024 election, became president again, and DOJ policy says you can't prosecute a sitting president, so the case got paused. But Smith is making clear the evidence is there, the case is solid, and once Trump leaves office, prosecution will resume, and conviction is likely. That's not speculation. That's the special counsel, after years of investigation, saying publicly that he has enough evidence to convict Trump, that Trump committed crimes, and that Trump will face justice. So yeah, this is the story. Jack Smith delivering Trump's most devastating evidence yet. Tons of evidence proving willfulness, court filings showing Trump's direct involvement in crimes, testimony, recordings, and documents all proving Trump's guilt, and Smith confirming publicly that Trump would have been convicted if not for immunity. Let's break it down. All right, so let's dig into the specific evidence Jack Smith has and why it's so powerful. Because this isn't circumstantial, this isn't speculation, this is hard evidence, the kind that wins criminal convictions. Let's start with the classified documents case in detail. Trump is accused of three main crimes here: unauthorized retention of classified documents, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to obstruct. And Smith has evidence proving all three. On unauthorized retention, Smith needs to prove Trump knowingly kept classified documents, that he understood they were classified, that he knew he wasn't authorized to keep them. And Smith has recordings. According to reports, Trump was recorded in meetings showing classified documents to people without security clearance. And in those recordings, Trump acknowledges the documents are classified. He says things like, "This is classified, and I probably shouldn't be showing you this." That's Trump's own voice admitting he knows the documents are classified and knows he shouldn't have them. That proves knowledge. That proves willfulness. That's exactly what Smith needs to convict. Smith also has testimony from Trump's staff, people who worked at Mar-a-Lago, who packed boxes, who moved documents, and they describe Trump giving orders, "Move these boxes. Don't let investigators see these. Tell them we don't have any more classified documents." That's obstruction. That's Trump directing a cover-up, and multiple witnesses are prepared to testify about it. That's powerful evidence, because it's not just one person's word, it's multiple witnesses, all telling the same story about Trump's obstruction. On conspiracy to obstruct, Smith has encrypted messages and communications, messages between Trump's lawyers and staff coordinating the cover-up, discussing how to hide documents, how to lie to investigators, how to prevent the government from recovering classified materials, and these messages show Trump was directing the conspiracy, that it wasn't rogue employees, it was Trump giving orders. That proves conspiracy. That proves Trump wasn't just passively keeping documents, he was actively working to hide them from investigators. Smith also has evidence that Trump lied to his own lawyers. Trump signed a statement saying all classified documents had been returned. His lawyer submitted that statement to the Justice Department, but it was false. Trump had kept documents, and Smith has evidence proving Trump knew the statement was false when he signed it. That's obstruction. That's making false statements. That's using your lawyer to lie to investigators. All serious federal crimes. And Smith can prove all of it. Now let's talk about the election interference case. Trump is accused of conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy to deprive citizens of voting rights. And Smith has evidence for each charge. The fake elector scheme is central to Smith's case. Trump's team organized slates of fake electors in states Trump lost: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. In each state, Trump supporters posed as legitimate electors. They signed certificates claiming they were the duly elected electors, and they submitted these fraudulent certificates to Congress. The plan was to create confusion about which electoral votes were legitimate, and then to pressure Vice President Pence to either accept the fake votes or send everything back to state legislatures. That's fraud, that's conspiracy, and Smith has evidence showing Trump directed it. Smith has documents showing Trump's personal involvement, communications between Trump and Republican officials, organizing the fake electors, planning documents describing the scheme, and most damning, evidence that Trump was told the plan was illegal. According to Smith's court filings, multiple people warned Trump that the fake elector scheme was crazy or illegal. His own lawyers told him it wouldn't work, that it was criminal, that he shouldn't do it, and Trump pushed forward anyway. That proves willfulness. That proves Trump knew what he was doing was illegal, and that makes conviction much easier, because Trump can't claim he thought the plan was legal. He can't claim he was relying on advice of counsel. His own advisors told him it was illegal, and he did it anyway. Smith also has evidence of Trump pressuring state officials. The infamous call to Brad Raffensperger in Georgia is just one example. Trump called the Georgia Secretary of State, pressured him to find votes, threatened him with criminal consequences if he didn't comply. That call was recorded. Trump's words are on tape, and they prove Trump was trying to manipulate election results, trying to pressure state officials to change legitimate outcomes. That's election interference. That's abuse of power, and it's all documented. Smith has evidence of Trump's involvement in planning January 6, communications about rallying supporters, about directing them to the Capitol, about using mob pressure to stop certification. This evidence shows Trump's intent, shows he was trying to prevent Congress from certifying Biden's victory. That's conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, and Smith can prove it. Now, one of the most significant revelations in Smith's recent disclosures is the scope of the conspiracy. Smith has identified 160 Republican officials who were involved in or had knowledge of Trump's schemes to overturn the election. That's not a small group. That's dozens and dozens of people, lawmakers, state officials, party leaders, lawyers, all coordinating with Trump to overturn election results. And Smith has mapped it all out. He knows who was involved, what they did, what communications they had, and he has evidence documenting the entire conspiracy. That's devastating, because it shows this wasn't just Trump acting impulsively. This was a coordinated, multi-state effort involving scores of people, all working together to overturn a legitimate election, and Smith can prove it. Now let's talk about Smith's confidence in his case, because Smith doesn't just have evidence. He has so much evidence that he's publicly stating he could have convicted Trump. Smith's final report says he stood fully behind the merits of prosecution. That's a strong statement. That's Smith saying, I'm confident in this case. I believe we would have won at trial. The only reason we didn't is DOJ policy about prosecuting sitting presidents. And multiple news outlets have reported that Smith told colleagues and others that the evidence was strong enough to convict, that Trump would have been found guilty if the case had proceeded. That's not normal for prosecutors. Prosecutors are usually cautious. They talk about presenting evidence and letting juries decide. They don't typically predict conviction. But Smith is confident enough to say it because the evidence is that strong. Trump's own words on tape, multiple witnesses, documentary evidence, all of it proving Trump's crimes beyond reasonable doubt. So Smith knows he can win. He knows that when this case eventually goes to trial, after Trump leaves office, conviction is likely. And that's why Smith's revelations are so devastating for Trump. Because this isn't a weak case that might go either way. This is a strong case, a case with overwhelming evidence, a case that Smith is confident will result in conviction. Now, why is Smith releasing all this information now? Why make public statements about his evidence? because Smith wants the American people to know, he wants Congress to know, he wants everyone to understand that Trump committed serious crimes, that the evidence is overwhelming, that prosecution is justified. And Smith is also laying groundwork for when Trump leaves office. By making the evidence public now, Smith is ensuring that future prosecutors will have everything they need, that the case will be ready to proceed immediately when Trump is no longer protected by immunity. Smith is also putting pressure on Republicans by revealing that 160 Republican officials were involved in Trump's conspiracy. Smith is forcing those officials to make choices. Do they cooperate with investigators? Do they protect themselves? Or do they stay loyal to Trump and risk prosecution? And by making the evidence public, Smith is making it harder for Republicans to dismiss the prosecutions as political because the evidence is objective. It's Trump's own words, his own actions, his own staff testifying against him. That's not a witch hunt. That's a criminal case backed by tons of evidence. So Smith's revelations serve multiple purposes: informing the public, preparing for future prosecution, pressuring conspirators to cooperate, and undermining Trump's claims of innocence. So yeah, this is where we are. Jack Smith with tons of evidence against Trump, evidence proving willfulness in the classified documents case, evidence proving Trump directed the fake elector scheme, evidence showing 160 Republican officials were involved in the conspiracy, and Smith publicly stating he's confident this evidence would convict Trump. Let's talk about what this means for Trump's future. Okay, so let's break down what Jack Smith's devastating evidence means for Trump's legal future. Because this isn't just about one case or one charge. This is about Trump facing overwhelming evidence of multiple serious crimes, and that evidence making prison time inevitable once Trump leaves office. First, let's talk about the legal reality Trump is facing. Smith has evidence sufficient to convict Trump on multiple charges: unauthorized retention of classified documents, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, election interference, fraud, all serious federal crimes, all carrying significant prison time. And Smith has publicly stated he's confident in the strength of his case, that Trump would have been convicted if prosecution had proceeded. So once Trump leaves office, once presidential immunity no longer protects him, prosecution will resume. And based on Smith's evidence, conviction is likely, very likely. Trump's own words on tape, multiple witnesses, documentary evidence, all proving Trump's crimes. That's the kind of case that results in guilty verdicts. So Trump is looking at prison time, not as speculation, not as political rhetoric, as a realistic outcome based on the strength of the evidence. Second, let's talk about the timeline. When does Trump face prosecution? Trump's current term as president ends in January 2029, unless something happens before then. The moment Trump is no longer president, the moment DOJ policy no longer protects him, prosecution resumes. Jack Smith has done the work, the evidence is compiled, the case is ready. Future prosecutors will pick up where Smith left off, and Trump will be arrested, charged, and tried. Based on the evidence Smith has, conviction is likely, and sentencing could mean years or decades in prison depending on the charges and whether sentences run consecutively. So Trump has about 4 years of protection left. 4 years before the legal system comes for him, and there's nothing he can do to permanently avoid it. He can't pardon himself for state crimes. He can't escape once he's out of office. Justice is coming. It's just delayed. Third, let's talk about Trump's possible defenses. Because with this much evidence, what can Trump's lawyers argue? They can't claim Trump didn't know the documents were classified. Trump's on tape acknowledging they're classified. They can't claim Trump didn't obstruct. Multiple witnesses describe Trump directing the obstruction. They can't claim Trump thought the fake elector scheme was legal. Trump was told it was illegal and did it anyway. They can't claim Trump relied on advice of counsel. His lawyers told him not to do what he did. So Trump's defenses are extremely limited. He'll probably argue selective prosecution, that he's only being charged because of who he is. But that argument fails when the evidence is this strong. When prosecutors can prove crimes beyond reasonable doubt, he might argue that some of his conduct was official acts protected by immunity, but most of what Trump is accused of doesn't qualify as official presidential action. Private political schemes, personal obstruction, campaign-related fraud, none of that is protected. So Trump doesn't have good defenses, the evidence is too strong, his conduct too clearly criminal, and conviction becomes almost inevitable. Fourth, let's talk about what this means politically. Because Trump facing overwhelming evidence of crimes affects his political viability, some voters don't care. Trump's hardcore base will support him no matter what evidence emerges. They'll claim it's all fabricated or political. But for everyone else, for moderate voters, for independents, overwhelming evidence of crimes matters. It makes Trump unelectable, makes him too risky, too tainted. So Trump's support outside his base is likely to erode as more evidence becomes public. As Smith's findings get reported, as people understand the strength of the case against Trump, Republicans in Congress will face pressure Some will want to distance themselves from Trump to avoid being associated with a proven criminal. Others will feel obligated to defend Trump because of their base, and the party will be torn apart. Fifth, let's talk about the broader implications for accountability, because Jack Smith's investigation and the evidence he's compiled represent the legal system working, despite Trump's efforts to obstruct, despite his claims of immunity, despite his attacks on investigators. The legal system built a case, compiled evidence, and prepared to hold Trump accountable. That's important because it shows that even presidents can be investigated. Even the most powerful people in the country can face justice. That rule of law still means something. And when Trump eventually faces trial, when he's convicted based on this evidence, that will be a historic moment. A former president held criminally accountable for serious crimes. That's never happened before in American history, and it will send a message that nobody is above the law, that presidents who commit crimes will face consequences, that justice may be delayed, but it's not denied. Sixth, let's talk about what Trump should do, because facing this much evidence, the rational thing would be to negotiate, to seek a plea deal, to try to minimize prison time by admitting guilt and cooperating. But Trump won't do that. His ego won't allow it. He can't admit he's guilty, can't admit he committed crimes. So he'll fight. He'll go to trial. He'll force prosecutors to prove their case. And they will, because the evidence is overwhelming. And Trump will be convicted. And because he didn't cooperate, because he showed no remorse, sentencing will be harsher. So Trump's ego and his refusal to accept accountability will cost him, will result in more prison time, will make his situation worse. So what's the bottom line? Jack Smith has delivered Trump's most devastating evidence yet. Tons of evidence proving willfulness in the classified documents case, court filings showing Trump personally directed the fake elector scheme, evidence linking Trump to 160 Republican officials in a conspiracy to overturn the election, recordings, testimony, and documents all proving Trump's guilt, and Smith publicly stating he's confident this evidence would convict Trump. The only thing protecting Trump right now is presidential immunity, DOJ policy that sitting presidents can't be prosecuted. But that protection is temporary. When Trump leaves office in 2029, prosecution resumes. The evidence is ready, the case is built, and conviction is likely. Trump is looking at serious prison time, multiple charges, overwhelming evidence, strong prosecution, and weak defenses. Based on everything Smith has revealed, Trump going to prison is not a question of if, but when. Once immunity lifts, once Trump is out of office, justice is coming, and Trump knows it. That's why he's so desperate to stay in power, why he fights so hard against these investigations, because he knows that losing immunity means losing freedom, means spending the rest of his life in prison. So Trump's future is clear. 4 more years of presidential protection, and then arrest, trial, conviction, and prison. The evidence guarantees it. Jack Smith has made sure of that, and there's nothing Trump can do to stop it.